to overthrow the results of an election. That's talking about, jailing his political opponents. Yeah. Like, that rhetoric doesn't scare people?
Well, we talk about this this is what
I don't think
I've been talking about this every night.
I don't think y'all have enough conversations about it. I feel like I heard more on this network about is Kamala Harris black than I do about, Donald Trump being a fascist.
Well,
am I wrong, Angela?
Honestly, I'm sorry.
Oh, I like that.
I'm not. Look, I'm a huge fan of yours.
Okay.
But to say that we're sitting around discussing is Kamala Harris black, I've
seen that. I've seen those roundtable discussions a lot. Now that Anderson, for you to say that y'all don't have those conversations.
I've never asked somebody is.
Oh, I'm not saying
Kamala
you.
Harris
I said the network.
He said the network.
I don't think anyone I don't think any anchor on this network has been going around saying, "Is she black?"
Y'all have never had
definitely. It's definitely.
We have had. Look, I'm sure we have had, nutty people or people who have strongly held beliefs who I may disagree with, who somewhere on some panel have said something.
Hi, I'm Ana Marie Cox. This is 90 Days with Ana Marie Cox. It is 10 days, almost single digits, 10 days till the election. This is a show where we talk about the election and how wild, unpredictable, unprecedented, and brain-breaking. We talk about it with smart people. Today's smart person is Beau Friedlander. He is my executive producer. We met back at Air America. Do you remember Air America?
Well, I do. Yeah, I do, but I don't know if everyone else does. Most people just think it's a CIA thing.
They probably do. And of course, the secret is we were. Like, it wasn't a very successful CIA op, I guess.
I don't feel like I did very much in the way of saving our country.
So, you go.
I'm curious what you're going to ask me. To get me started.
Beau, this is my first question to every guest, which is, what are you thinking about? What are you noticing? What do you think we should be talking about?
Well, I remember when Hillary Clinton didn't get elected, and I'm thinking a lot about that. That's what I'm thinking about. There's less complacency this time around, but I'm nervous. I'm genuinely nervous, and I don't really know what to think because I have a hard time kind of distinguishing between what is maybe just a ungrounded kind of panic and what is a legitimate fear.
I wish I could help you.
I wish someone could help me.
I think that it is good to acknowledge the panic and not deny it.
Yeah,
it's real.
Sure.
It's a real emotion, and it is grounded in reality.
Well, maybe the first thing to do is to talk about what's the fear? Like, what am I afraid of? And I have to say, I'm taking Trump at his word right now, and I'm taking the situation is in concrete terms, which is there's this old guy who's a fascist and who is a racist and who is adoringly spoken of Hitler, and it seems like an unhinged, dangerous person. And then there's a guy right behind him who is the puppet of our nation's oligarchy. So, we're looking at something that I don't think we've ever seen that before, have we? Except outside of Russia. So that's what I'm afraid of: fascism.
See, I wasn't even going to ask you what you're afraid of. Although I'm glad
you knew I was going to say fascism.
I knew you were going to say fascism, and I do think most of the people that I circulate with and talk to are afraid of that, and that is a top line way of talking about it. Friend of the show, Parker Malloy, has much more bodily grounded fears. Like, she, as a trans person, is in fear of her life.
Right.
And I know some queer people who are also in fear for their marriages. And of course, people who can get pregnant feel also in fear of their lives. Now, that's all a function of fascism. Fascism is the top line. But the way that fascism works is to rob freedoms and bodily autonomy and put people's lives in danger or fear of losing their lives.
No, fascism is the, you know, I know you like Target, but fascism is the target of politics. It's one size fits all. It's like, we got something for you, but it's just this, and you don't get to choose very much. Maybe Target's a bad example. It's more like a store that has one kind of pair of socks and one pair of shoes, and everything's brown. And I just, I, the thing that I don't understand is, yeah, I know that Kamala Harris called Donald Trump a fascist the other day. And I know that a lot of people in the news have used that word, but it feels disembodied. It doesn't feel like, like if you say to me, that guy over there is a fascist and he means harm to everyone you know and love, and you go, what should we do? And you find me in an unmediated moment where I'm just saying what I think, I'll be like, kill him. No, listen, I'm not trying to get the Secret Service to come knock on my door, because I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, like, if you tell me there's a fascist, I'm going to say, run. Like, this is a problem. And I don't think that's the vibe I'm getting from the media or from anyone else. Like,
there's a few sane responses to a fascist. I mean, I would say run or run towards, right? I mean, I'm very pro punching Nazis. Like Captain America, like Superman. I think that's a good idea a lot of the time, especially if they're self-confessed Nazis.
Well, there's going to be a great opportunity at the polls on election day. It could be National Punch a Nazi Day.
Yes. And I also think we were just talking about this, before we started taping, which is the Charlemagne Lagarde had an interview on CNN, which people in my circles are talking about as someone finally saying in the mainstream media the thing that the mainstream media should be doing, which is, yeah, you talk about how he's a fascist. This is actually just exactly what you said. You talk about how Trump is a fascist. Do you treat him like a fascist? Do you treat him like a threat?
It's super smart. There's a media term for that you said, and I can't remember it.
The view from nowhere.
Oh, the view from nowhere. So the view from nowhere is dangerous. Because I'm sitting right here and I'm looking, and I have friends who I know in the area, mostly tradesmen, who are probably going to vote for Trump. And when I point out that I have trans friends, or I have gay friends, I have daughters, I have friends who have wombs, lots of them, and it's not okay with me what they're signing on for, they just kind of like pat me on, like it's the conversational equivalent of being patted on the head as like a dumb kid, like everything's going to be okay. And that's what the fascist says, right? The fascist says, don't worry about it. It's all going to be okay, because together we're super strong. But together we also can only do maybe 1 + 1 or maybe 2 + 2. But there's no advanced math happening anymore. This is just like, this is a really sad thing where all we do is we sit around and, like, at the end of the day, maybe in a couple of years, all we're going to be eating is like little pieces of concrete and shitty milk. I mean, I don't know what the hell they're thinking, but these are oligarchs that are taking a run at our country. And if they succeed, I'm sorry, I am alarmed. And I do think that the middle class is going to get royally screwed, and everyone else is going to get royally screwed too.
I agree. And I think the only thing I wanted to add to your we're all going to be eating pieces of concrete or like all the same brown food is not all of us, right? Like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk will not be eating the same thing as all of us, right? Like the vast majority of the American people will be oppressed on every level imaginable if things go the way that they could go.
Yeah.
The thing that we've both mentioned that I just want to drive home is that to treat Trump as a fascist, if you are a reporter or someone who can broadcast, which we can too, is we're not going to be taking any shots. Like, again, Secret Service, please.
Nobody's
not
doing
a plan.
Anything. He's like,
our job, I think, is to get that bodily piece in and to talk about, he says he's a fascist, and this is what that means, and this is what he'll do. Radley Balco did a great piece on his Substack that was like, this is how the mass deportations will work. This is what will happen. These are how the camps will happen.
Yeah. Okay. And wait, but here's the thing, Anna. If I will say that Secret Service, whatever you are, because it's going to have a name and it's going to sound really innocuous, but it's going to suck. Don't come to my house because I'm not going to be hiding anyone in my house. By the way, if you need a place to hide, come to my house. Like, I think we're going to be looking at a country where, okay, before we got into this election cycle, there was talk about putting Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill, right? Now we're talking about hiding people in our houses. That and Donald Trump was talking about the 1798 law that would allow him to kick everyone out of the country. One big day of really serious pain. I don't know. Does that remind you of Kristallnacht? Because it reminds me of Kristallnacht. And like, so what do you do about that? Well, we don't have a Klaus von Stauffenberg. We can't call on him because if we do, the Secret Service will come to your house. But what do you do?
So I have things to offer.
I'm all ears.
Embedding yourself in a mutual aid society. Those are going to be the people operating underground railroads. The people that do on the ground harm reduction. The people that distribute food and water to unhoused people outside government, right? There are anarchist organizations out there that don't give a shit about like getting a grant or whatever, right? Like they just like I speak about it a lot, the free fridge program. That there's probably one. Just look it up. There is a registry that might disappear, so look now. That are just like they're like the little library project. Which, by the way, look that up now. It might disappear. And it's just a fridge on someone's private property that you can drop stuff off at, right? Those people who operate in what are basically cells, right, are going to be the people that lead the kind of insurgency, right? Like that if it comes to what we're talking about, those are going to be the people to get in touch with. That is actually like what is happening with reproductive justice groups. I mentioned I was on a call with a group the other day that they're not organized.
They're not.
They are organized at the level of sending out an email to people. Let's get on this call. Nothing here is recorded. Don't send texts about it. Like I can say this because I'm being very.
I see what you're saying. And so let me ask you this though. So as a citizen, as a concerned citizen who, for instance, would like to help with a part of fascism alleviation, mitigation, already afoot in our country in the form of the abortion laws all over the country. Are there, like, I know I can download letters and send them to people and say, you should vote. Like, that would be cool if you voted, right? So, but are there, can I download, here's birth control. I'm going to send it to you in the mail.
Okay, so there are a couple of things you can do. One is you can look into practical support organizations, which are technically non-political. And that's how I got plugged into this. They do de-escalation.
Is that churches or?
Okay, so the organization that I got plugged into is called Apiary, which is a reference to cells, honeycomb, bees.
Oh, smart.
Yeah. And they are technically apolitical, technically don't have anything to do with politics, but they do training in de-escalation and they do training in practical support for people in crisis. We don't have to talk about what that crisis might be. They may be traveling between states.
Gotcha.
And what would that person need? If you are driving someone who is in crisis of some kind, what would you do if a law enforcement officer pulls you over? What would be some good things to know about your rights and that person's rights. Other kinds of practical things. These sessions are not recorded.
This sounds a lot like the kind of legal aid. So I wrote a book with this guy Lewis Steele a few years back called The Butler's Child, and he was one of the first white attorneys for working for the NAACP, and he was famously fired, and the whole legal staff resigned afterwards when he said that the Supreme Court was racist in a New York Times Magazine article. The Warren Court, it was a big deal, very controversial. We went down to Occupy Wall Street, Zuccotti Park, together because he was so interested. He had been in the Attica prison riots. He was a legal observer there. He wanted to see, and what he wanted to see was what are the legal observers doing, and they were incredibly organized, and they also had all different kinds of support, right? And they also had a way to make sure that they were not being infiltrated because they didn't talk about certain things. Now, let's go back to fascism for a second. I think it's an extremely fucked situation that we live in a country where we have to speak in code.
It is. I'm going to continue to offer specific ideas around that.
Go ahead.
Free fridge programs are a thing that are technically apolitical. Getting it plugged into that kind of organization will get you in touch with people who are the kind of folks who self-organize and who do practical support for other kinds of things, perhaps. If you can find a non-governmental harm reduction organization, that's a good place to go. These all things exist in Austin. There's also medic training. It's called street medic training that you can sign up for. And these are very few people, however much you think you want to, are going to get a call that's like, can you house a person right now? If you're just entering into this kind of work, you are not going to be asked to drop off abortion medication, probably.
Right.
You would like to, especially as white people who consider ourselves really liberal and into that. That's a wonderful, heroic role to have. Starting with dropping off food at the free fridge is going to be the place that you start. Because also, and this probably sounds familiar, you need to gain trust. People need to know you're serious about doing this kind of work.
Trust is key, actually. Because we are talking about a situation where it's very easy to have it be sabotaged or infiltrated or whatever. So I obviously am fairly worked up about the current situation. I've even made some inquiries about moving out of the country if it looks like it's going sideways. And you and I both know a journalist who already has a contingency plan, already has everything lined up, ready to go, knows where he's going, she's going, they're going, not giving any hints out about this person. But, and to me, I've just, when we've been talking, embodied a kind of panic. And you were, thank you, trying to give me some good orderly direction. I'm going to turn the tables on you. What has you feeling a little panicked right now?
So this mutual friend that we have, after that discussion where they shared the plan they have, that rocked me pretty hard.
Same.
Because this person is not particularly political, except in what they do for a living, right? You and I have heard celebrities and left-leaning people talk about leaving the country before. That's like a thing that liberals kind of do sometimes, right? Before Trump even. Bush.
I just did it.
Yeah. But I'm saying it's historic to right? There's yes. And Bush was a good reason to leave. Sure. But this friend of ours saying it, they were saying it out of fear for personal safety as a journalist and their
Yeah.
children's personal safety.
Because of what this person
Right.
does
Yeah.
for a living.
So that rocked me. And I will admit, I was on the floor in this room. I have I have a dog bed that I stand on when I
Oh, yeah? I
record.
did not know that.
It's like an orthopedic dog bed, so it's like good for my feet. It's actually not a bed, it's like a throw thing, and I laid down on it in a fetal position for a little while.
After we spoke to this person.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there are probably really good pheromones in that dog bed for you.
And the dog's not here, but like, and I could see like the hair, and I kind of just laid there for a little while and felt it. And then I was very fortunate to have another thing I needed to go to.
Go
So
through.
I
Yes.
go to, and I got up, and I also fortunate enough that I could ride my bike to this. So I got on my bike and started pedaling, and that helped the physical activity. And then I looked around my neighborhood in South Austin, which is very working class. I was like a gentrifier, and then one of the last ones. And there are a bunch of Harris signs, and even some homemade ones, which is adorable, right? There's somebody with like a sheet hanging off their front porch that has Harris walls and rainbow.
Yeah.
And there's a
That's
bunch of
awesome.
like Halloween decorations that perhaps someone like me would probably do something a little more like discreet. There are some really exuberant Halloween decorations, right? Like inflatables and like cobwebs everywhere. And as I was biking around, I was like, okay, I could go to that person's house.
Mm-hmm.
I go to that person's house. I know that person. That's where the vet with a service dog lives.
You're thinking about where you can go that is safe?
Yeah, or just same, not necessarily if things get really bad even. Just like
Yeah.
there are people in my neighborhood that I know and that I can trust. I wasn't even going to like if we have to do operation like whatever, but more just like there are good people in my neighborhood.
Listen, the thing is, Anna, I've reached a point now where the good people, I get where you're going here, and I want to just put a pin in it because I think it's important to say this, that I hear you on that, but I also, I come from, I worked at Chelsea Green Publishing. I've worked in sustainable politics for a long time, deep green. I was the Unabomber's publisher once upon a time. And whatever, I don't know what kind of gave me crazy cred and street cred in the eco world, but the thing that when I see a house with a 20-foot plastic skeleton in the front yard and a 6-foot at the shoulder skeleton dog, I think two things. One, I think dog people, cool, I like dog people. Two, I think apocalypse, we're screwed. And I think that because they spent $250 on a giant piece of plastic made out of oil, and they spent, or more, and they've spent a tremendous amount of time and money creating this spectacle in front of their homes in what can only be understood as, it's no longer a pagan thing they're doing. This is just crass consumerism. And it's the same crass consumerism that leads to Trump. It eventually leads to Trump. And what's missing is the soul. The soul of the holiday is it's not just even spooky, it's paganism. It's the Day of the Dead. It's actually a very serious and solemn thing. So we've turned it into something else. Cool, whatever. And I'm being a party pooper. I'm an introvert. I don't like Halloween parties and I don't dress up. But here's the thing. I think when I see those homes with the big plastic displays everywhere, that's what I think is like, okay. And I bet you don't like being taxed. And I bet you want to not have anyone tell you that you're wasting energy and that like we can be seen from Mars because of your fun day of Halloween. So like the thing that's missing from this election, and it's missing from the Harris campaign too, They've done lip service to it, but they haven't done the serious talk, which is, the problem is it becomes the mirror image of Trump's fascism, right? It becomes this conversation of like, okay, no cars, lights out, stop eating animals, and you're going to have to change life entirely in order to stop climate change. And nobody's talking about that. Meanwhile, it was 80 degrees in Connecticut the other day at the end of October. So I have some fear about that, Anna. I have some fear that we just went through an election cycle where the panic was so strong about this fascist that they didn't answer the fascist with the stuff that matters strongly enough, which is planet's on fire. There are finite resources in this planet. If you don't think that's what Ukraine and the Gaza conflict are about at root in the Middle East, it's about resources and different parties egging other parties on to make problems so that they can get those resources. I mean, that's what I want to hear about. I didn't hear much about Gaza. I didn't hear what I needed to hear. And I didn't hear, yada, yada, yada. So what do you say to somebody who is a little more left than center when, in this election, and I'm going to vote. I've already did vote, and I voted for Harris, and I voted for every Democrat on my list. But Anna, let's be real. Like, the politics are not talking about what really matters. What was that disembodied voice that Charlemagne was talking about? The
view from
voice
nowhere.
from nowhere.
The view from nowhere. Yeah.
Come on. Like, we are right now. That's Halloween from nowhere. Like, said nobody, get me a ton of plastic. Yay. All right, go ahead. Talk me off the ledge.
I don't think it's possible to talk you off the ledge. I'm not going to try. I have known you for long enough, and we've had conversations like this behind the scenes long enough that I don't think I can talk you off the ledge. You are a very strong-willed, smart person.
Okay,
and those are the people that are really hard to talk off the ledge. But I can tell you where I am.
Okay.
Which is, so there are some acronyms for fear, right? Fuck everything and run.
Yeah.
False expectations appearing real.
Yeah.
And a lot of those acronyms for me have to do with my fear is always going to be about a thing that isn't happening right now. Right.
There's another one though, Anna, face everything and recover. And that's what I'm saying we're not doing.
So I'm going to finish some thoughts.
All right, go ahead.
Even that face everything and recover is about being in the present moment. What is available now? What information do I have about what is happening now? What can I do now? And in this present moment, what I can do is some of the stuff I talked about, drop my leftovers off at the free fridge, go to these organizing meetings, even though I started going to them after Dobbs, and I have yet to get a call. I have yet to get one of those calls to where I can be a hero, damn it.
To drive somebody or something.
Yeah, I just keep showing up for the meetings, right?
But that's awesome.
I like doing it. It gives me hope.
But is it palliative care?
And I don't think so.
Do you know what I mean, though?
I think by showing up, even as someone who's not getting the calls to like do heroic things, I'm sure there are people on those calls that are.
Oh, that's what I'm asking. I'm saying, is it palliative care? That way of being of service is great, right?
Right.
You're maybe helping feeding someone, maybe helping someone get medicine they need,
right,
or medical care they need.
Right.
But is it palliative care for a body politic that has a bigger problem, which is global warming, which is, a business world run wild?
Okay, so this is where we have a fundamental difference, which you believe the case is the disease is terminal and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's what palliative care is.
That's not true. You're assuming something about me.
So for me, so palliative care in medicine has to do with just making someone comfortable until the end, right?
Okay, that's fair. You're right. No, that's right. You're right. I did say palliative care, and that is what it means.
Right. So what I believe that I am doing is keeping someone alive until the cure is found.
Ooh, nice. I have a very hard time
And
I'm like
every
a
time
heliotrope. I'm like a heliotrope, but the opposite. I lean towards the darkness. And like you're a heliotrope doing what a heliotrope does, which is leaning towards the light.
I have to, because otherwise I get hopeless, and doing comfort care for myself and leaning towards the light is how I stay alive. Like, just I personally stay alive. Otherwise I get hopeless, and where I go with hopelessness is I will go to a place where I'm in danger for
Or you'll
myself
curl up on your dog's bed
and not move.
Yeah.
Right? And not get up.
Yeah.
And so again, this is kind of just looking at the moment, looking at like what I can do right now, looking at my community right now. And I'll even go to the Halloween decorations, which I see what you're saying, and I agree that of all the holidays to get upset about commercialization, it's funny to use Halloween, but I actually like that better
Leaving
than
Christmas alone.
I like that better.
Yeah.
So what I see when I see those things is, I'm not going to say you're wrong.
Yeah.
But I also see it's a yes and situation. What I also see are people who want to communicate something to the neighborhood, who want to communicate a joyousness and communicate like, I am participating in something larger than myself by doing this. I like my neighbors. I want them to see how cool this is. I am taking some time to do this because it's important to me, and it gives me joy as a person to make something that's, I know, let me finish this thought, to make something that feels like art to me. That is art.
Fine.
And I'm going to just, you may disagree with the use of the palette that they have, but that kind of like exuberant Halloween decoration is self-expression.
1,000%. Listen, and I love what you just said. And I'm thinking about my friends who I know are from, I live in my hometown. I grew up in this town. I've been here since 1969. So I know people here who are Trumpies, because I've known people my whole life, and some of them happen to be Trumpies. Here's the deal. Yes, those people are expressing a joy that they want to share with the neighborhood and say, we are fun people. This is fun. Come have fun at our house. If you want to have fun, you can have fun here, because look, we have a giant dog and a giant skeleton in our front yard, and there's a smoke machine at night. It's cool. I have had the experience just recently. I've been going through a rough patch, and to a person, the Trumpies that I know all were like, what can I do? Is there anything I can do? And they were including like, do you want me to write an email? Do you want me to, like whatever? And my friend from kindergarten, Pat, was like, come up, you can have my cottage. Just stay there. Just get out. Go and stay as long as you want. The generosity, and this is the problem I have. I don't have a problem with the generosity, but my problem is we're not talking about bad people. And the country is now polarized, where it's like, if you like one person, you don't like the other. And I think, I remember when I was a kid, you could have Republicans and Democrats in the same room and they could have a civil conversation. It was not a problem. And then now we're in a time where that's no longer the case. But I still think, when I speak to my friends who, I guess if they vote for Trump, they're technically fascists, they are very kind, welcoming people. And that, I think, is the part of the Trump movement that we don't see, that they see, which is how Trump says, like, those are not very nice people. He's talking to people who put a premium on being nice. And at least that's what they think they do. And it's not, it doesn't extend to everybody. In fact, it's very monolinear, but that is the problem set, I think, is we've been polarized, and I don't want to get into a media conversation, but we're in this situation partially because of the media that Charlemagne the God was talking about. That the media is not really doing its job. Well, all right, let me ask you a question. What would it look like right now if the media was doing its job?
I think the media would be treating Trump like he's a fascist, which means talking about his very real threats to people, and that would be the only story. I don't think in that context you do big stories about his appearance at McDonald's. I don't think you do big stories about him talking about Arnold Palmer's dick, as weird as that was, and maybe it gets a mention. I wouldn't be spending a lot of time on it. I would be doing stories like Radley Balco did about this is how the mass deportation would be done, right? These are the people that are prepared to carry out Trump's, or actually not even Trump's ideas, right? Like that's part of the problem, is that there are a bunch of people behind him who are smarter and more well organized. And he is just the permission. He is just the vessel for all of this. I mean, there has been reporting on Project 2025. Great. But I just don't think we do. How many stories does the media do about the fucking Super Bowl, right? Like, how many stories do they do about the Oscars? How many stories? There is a way to keep covering a story. Like this, people that I know in the media are like, we can't keep covering that story because like we've covered it, right? Cover it like it's the cover. I mean, the way that natural disasters get covered.
Oh
right?
my God. Do you know every single author of Project 2025, every single person who worked on it, and there's a lot of people who worked on it, could be their own story. Here's their story. This is their thing. This is this person. This is the time they got arrested for doing the thing. This is the road rage. This is the that. This is the dysfunction that this is coming out of, because it's coming out of a place of deep dysfunction.
Start covering undecided voters to the degree that there are undecided voters, which is not a lot. And they are idiots. I'm sorry. They are idiots. If you are still undecided, your opinion does not matter.
No,
like, it just doesn't.
If you're still undecided, you're like, oh, wait, there's an election? So who's up?
And also, if you can't decide between the fascist and the sort of traditionally corrupt and influenceable Democrat, then I don't care what you're okay with fascism. I don't care about your opinion.
It's like you're sitting at the nuclear power plant's panel and all you can think is donuts.
Yeah. Or do I stop it? Do I stop this disaster from happening? I can't decide if I stop this disaster from happening. So like, stop with the fucking focus groups. Stop with the town halls. Stop covering even the polls. And the polls, to the extent they would be covered, would be like, oh my God, there's half the country that's okay with fascism. You know? Like,
well, okay, wait. You just said the thing. Okay, so, well, was it a boat parade where there was the Nazi flags?
Yes.
And then obviously someone said, if you're at a rally and there's a Nazi flag and nobody says anything about it, you're at a Nazi rally.
Yeah.
So, I thought that was a little bit of a syllogism, but it's whatever. It's close enough. It wasn't a Nazi rally. It was like some schmuck with
it's people who are okay
Nazi
with
flag. People think it's okay. And that's the thing. Like, it's like Hitler's willing executioners. So just like, oh, well, those Jews, they really did kind of suck. All right. I need to hear a little bit more, and then maybe we'll find a happier topic to talk about. Like, I don't know what you're watching on TV right now, but I need to hear a little bit more in an organized way about how I can be less influenced by the darkness and more influenced by the light in this situation, and what that looks like. I already can tell you one thing I am going to do today is I'm going to send out 10 letters.
Yes.
Tell me what else I can do.
That's huge. And that's a in the moment thing, right?
Sure.
Like, that's a thing you can do right now. I would look into mutual aid organizations in your community. And
now, is a mutual aid organization, like, I know they refer to certain recovery groups as mutual aid organizations, but those aren't don't have really a political valency. What would it be like around here? The beekeepers?
I mean, like the apiary organization that I mentioned?
Kidding.
Like that it's called apiary?
Yeah. Chicken egg farmers.
Well, mutual aid is a broad category that does include recovery organizations. And I do think that if one is in recovery, one way to fight fascism is to stay in recovery. I am no good to the movement if I am using or otherwise expressing my addictions.
You might be. Who knows? We might have a really crazy drunk
I think I feel better
Trump.
about my ability to be a part of that.
I get you.
Movement.
Yeah.
I have a friend who felt very called to go to North Carolina. He had family there, also in recovery, and he called, and his sister was like, "Stay there. Don't come. Work on your recovery instead." And I feel like that's a good thing for people to keep in mind. I personally find that story very life affirming. Uh, I think so. I would do that mutual aid, and then things like free fridges that was my entry. You know, street medic stuff. They're all mutual aid organizations that get activated a lot in emergencies. There is in Austin just an organization called Austin Mutual Aid. I did stuff with them during the big freeze and during the heat waves. And what they do, which is really cool, they just slap a Google Doc up, and you just claim a spot. And you do I drove to a central location, and they gave me a pallet of water and a intersection to go to. And I did that. Right. And that is a way of plugging into these organizations that eventually will be the leaderless resistance if it comes to that. And that's all about the all instruction I can give you. The thing about this call that I was on a while ago that was really affirming for me and gave me hope, because sometimes I do think about, why haven't they called to ask me to do something heroic, right? Like, like when do I get to go, on the front lines?
Yeah.
Is one of the people who was bringing her experience said, we have redundancy after redundancy after redundancy. We are planning for the crisis that we don't know what it'll look like yet.
Smart.
All right, Beau, your turn. I'm afraid to ask you because...
Oh, I know I sound crazy, but no, the thing that I do is really simple. When I'm out in the world, I am friendly and I don't care who I'm looking at. And if I can get someone to enter into a conversation with me, I tell them what I'm concerned about, and I do it in a way that isn't incendiary. And I have found that I don't get in many arguments with people. I do make friends. I try to be cheerful. I know it sounds simplistic, but I think the thing that we're missing right now in this country is an easy civility. And what we have in its place is a very uneasy fear of each other. And that is turning into this vibe problem. And it's a giant problem because it could actually harm real people, real groups of people. And the way around that is to remind people of their humanity. And I don't care what your political persuasion is, but if you have a pleasant conversation with somebody about the weather, about your dog, about the trees being pretty, you're moving in the right direction. And the minute you start talking about the immigrants or the trans people or that you're mispronouncing somebody and I can't believe someone's inconvenienced me, you've walked into the darkness. And so, like, as much as I talk about the dark, as much as I sound like a rabid kind of whatever I sound like, crazy lefty, my answer is like the same, like this Dostoevsky's model is the same thing. It's like there's a baseline humanity that will actually save the world if it can actually get a foothold. And I'm not so sure it can right now, but I try to be a part of that.
I'm smiling because...
Sorry.
So would one way that you could connect with people be to talk to them about their awesome Halloween decorations, even though they're made of plastic?
If I'm in that position where I'm talking to somebody, I'd be like, so oh my God,
you're in your neighborhood, for instance, and you
said yes.
Yes.
If I do, but when I walk away, I think they're part. No. They're not mutually exclusive. And that's what I'm talking about with civility. I don't have to agree with them, but I do have to be nice. And in the process of being nice, all of the fight goes away. And that's what we need right now, is we need to make that fight go away. I can think that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. If I'm meeting somebody, a human being with dreams and wishes and fears and hopes and aspirations, I'm not going to do that to them. But because of Trump, really, we've entered into an age where everyone's doing that to everybody all the time. And that's why I don't want him to get elected.
Yeah, neither do I. But I'm just going to keep going back to these terrible, carbon footprint, giant Halloween decorations.
Okay, go ahead. Why don't we?
Because that gives me hope, because what those people are doing is saying, I want to be known, right? And so those are people that I can start to have a connection with. They might not be the homes that I go knock on, but you know what? Maybe the homes with Harris signs aren't as safe as I think they are either, because those might be like kind of performative liberals who don't really want to do, like, once things get really scary, or they might have reasons to not want to be involved in direct mutual aid because they have kids and they have things that they are concerned about getting exposed. And that's fine too. Like, I can't do anything about that. But I think that the human impulse to want to be known is one that can be leveraged into freedom.
Okay. And I heard what you said, and I understand what you're talking about with those plastic things, but I just would like to hark back to the Underground Railroad, because I'm not going to give it to you. Like, it's never okay to just have wanton consumerism to make a message. In the Underground Railroad, during the Underground Railroad, the signs, the signals, I mean, you can laugh all you want. I'm entitled to my opinion. You don't listen, you don't want to laugh at a guest. I'm a guest. The Underground Railroad, there were signals. There were quilts. There were ways in which people communicated with each other, and they were known on the Underground Railroad, which was a mutual aid society. And they were known. There would be a notch on a tree, and that's all it was. And I just made that up, and it's stupid. But there were quilts. I know there were quilts, and there was other things that people would have in their windows that would make it clear that that was a safe place. And you know what? They weren't made out of oil. And I have faith in humanity that they can do things that are, do things and enjoy things that don't require tons of oil, because it is the problem right now. One of the big ones. Sorry. Such a
This
small
has been a
point.
great conversation.
Who cares? Like, yeah, oil's a problem. Are you really fighting me on that? It's like saying fascism is a problem. Like, of course, they're both problems.
This has been a great conversation.
We can agree to disagree.
I feel like I have a guy that produces my show.
That's
that
me.
When it starts to be around 45 minutes, wants me to wrap up.
Yep, that's where we are.
And I know, because we are friends, not only will this conversation go on for a long time, although maybe it'll have an end at some point where I am forced to be like, God, Beau was right about everything.
Or I die.
And then who knows? Maybe it'll continue beyond then. But I know it can continue for a long time. So we're going to have to wrap up. And you and I will just continue having this conversation.
Well, I get to do final thoughts, though. So come on, ask me. Final thoughts.
Please.
I think you should reconsider your position about plastic animals. I'm done. I'm not going to say anything else. No, my final thought is this. If you know of somebody who's actually on the fence, I'm totally willing to entertain the idea that there might be such a person and they don't know who they're going to vote for. Tell them what you're worried about and encourage them to vote.
There is a category of people that are worth talking to, who are not undecided about who they support, but undecided about whether or not they will vote. Those are the category of people that, for instance, Vote Forward targets. Those letters that you're going to send are people who are infrequent voters. They're left-leaning, Democrat-leaning, infrequent voters.
And you know what? I'm going to give this to you. That I think that if we could get, if having a giant skeleton in your front yard will get those people to vote, I think that's great. And I see the point. I mean, my vision is like, Laura Ingalls Wilder crazy. Like, I know it's not like a realistic vision, but it is about that, I guess. You're right. At the end of the day, like, whatever it takes. And like, yes, being welcoming and kind of encouraging, creating a space where they feel okay about voting, those people. And I guess writing letters is the only thing I can really think of that does that. But talking to your neighbors who you think might not vote is another thing you could do.
Even if they have plastic decorations. All right.
Even.
This has been 90 Days with Ana Marie Cox. I've been talking to my producer, who is a longtime friend. We met at Air America, which feels like ancient history, but that's because we're ancient. 90 Days with Ana Marie Cox. 10 days left of the election. Vote if you can. Ask your friends what their plan is to vote. That's another really good way of encouraging people to vote. And less important, but rate and review. Subscribe. This is a podcast in addition to a YouTube show. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the podcast. We will continue for as long as things are in question, which means we're probably going to continue. But what's the shot we're going to keep doing the show after Election Day?
I mean, we're going to have to keep going until there's no insurgency, I guess.
So who knows? Hopefully that will be limited, but we're going to go into negative numbers starting November 6th.
Oh, negative? Yeah.
Meaning negative days after.
No, I got it.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you, Beau, and thank you, viewers and listeners.
This thing might have a short in it.
Not decorating for Halloween.
Oh, I love it.
Is the scariest thing Dwayne Charlton can think of.
The joy that the neighbors and the kids all get.
That being said, Dwayne's display is technically against the City of Franklin's ordinance. Not because of the ghosts, aliens, or sea monsters, but because he has too many flags.
I've been doing this for 25 years, and now all of a sudden I'm a bad guy.